Imagine your entire job is to tell a terrified ruler which days are safe and which are not, while knowing you're mostly guessing. Tonight, a man in a stone room above Prague is about to redraw the sky for an emperor who believes paper more than people. One extra stroke of ink and a vague hint becomes a death sentence dressed up as destiny. Priests shout, alchemists promise miracles, courtiers lie. He doesn't need to shout or promise anything. He just slides a diagram across a table and watches grown men move soldiers, cancel weddings, or postpone executions because of shapes they can't read. The higher his influence climbs, the more he feels the ground vanish under his feet. Every time the emperor obeys him, it gets harder to tell where astronomy ends and manipulation begins. Whether the real danger is in the sky or in the man drawing it. Midnight in Prague. Your breath fogs the frost on your window while the rest of the city sleeps under snow. On your desk, the emperor's birth chart lies open. Numbers, lines, symbols bleeding into each other. One angle is off by half a degree, and the stars say illness instead of death. Your hand trembles over the correction. Officially, you are Imperial Astrologer to Rudolph II. Unofficially, you are another exotic animal in his private collection of magicians and madmen. Your chamber is carved into the castle wall, narrow as a coffin but warm enough, for now. Roof and bread in exchange for certainty about the future. If your predictions fail, there is a colder room in this same castle where questions are not asked twice. You have walked past its door. Your observatory is a cramped attic with a slit in the roof and a brass tube pointing at a crack in the sky. No telescope, only quadrant and armillary sphere. On clear nights, metal bites your fingers as you track each star's rise and fall. On cloudy nights, you replace missing data with memory and guesswork. Tomorrow, when you ink the chart in smooth, confident lines, no one will see which parts belong to the heavens and which belong to your fear. You were not born in marble halls. Your first chart was drawn in a leaking house by candlelight with a stolen book and shaking hands. The figures promised you poverty, obscurity, and a lonely death. Then, fortune brightened. You learned the first rule of your craft. The stars are fixed, but the charts are negotiable. For the emperor, you begin with arithmetic, ephemerides, tables, tedious sums copied by monks who never saw Prague. Then the mathematics dissolves into language. Angles become sentences. You know that changing a single word can move armies, delay executions, or trigger them. You sharpen each phrase like a hidden blade. In the throne room, Rudolph II lounges like a sick lion, eyes ringed with sleeplessness. He waves away generals and priests, but when you enter with your folded charts, he leans forward like a starving man smelling meat. Tell me the truth, he says. What he means is, tell me a version of the future I can live with. Once, you saw a hard aspect between Rudolph and a certain noble, Mars crossing the man's name like a knife. You softened it on the parchment, not violent betrayal, just poisonous tongues at court. The emperor heard the word poison and hanged the noble for conspiracy. Officially, the stars condemned him. Now the tables whisper something darker. Saturn sliding toward Mars in Rudolph's 12th house, the house of hidden enemies. You check Venetian and Nuremberg tables, anything to find a misprint that will save you. The numbers repeat, cold and identical. Every calculation ends at the same narrow window of days when the emperor will be most vulnerable or most dangerous. Rudolph summons you at night, alone. No scribes, no guards, just him, a lamp, and the silence of stone. He asked you if there was any conspiracy against him. You think of the Golden Lane where alchemists race death for a stone that does not exist. You confirm there is danger, advising to delay any great decisions, and the blow will pass like a shadow. You pray the shadow does not fall on you. You're not the only man selling certainty. Magicians scry in black ink, priests thunder from pulpits, and alchemists promise gold from lead. Each of them hints that the emperor should trust their visions over yours. Each mistake you make fattens their arguments. You write notes in cipher, Latin reversed, symbols for planets replaced with beasts. It is not the stars you are hiding from, it is other men. One winter, Rudolph plans a grand hunt on a day your charts scream against. Moon afflicted, Mars sharp, omens clustered like wolves. You advise postponement. Courtiers snicker. The emperor refuses obeying a diagram over his own desire. A minor noble breaks his neck in a fall. Rudolph returns unharmed and angry, convinced you were right. As the conjunction approaches, you prepare 3 horoscopes for the same week, one of glory, one of caution, one blank. On 3 separate parchments, the same stars produce conquest, disaster, or silence. At dawn, you get rid of the glorious and the empty versions. You carry the cautious one to the emperor. You discover a cruel secret. The more Rudolph believes you, the truer your prophecies become. Warn him of betrayal, and he arrests old allies. Speak of illness, and he shuts himself in, breathing only fear. History will say the stars foretold his paranoia. You fed it like a servant feeding meat to a dog that already bites. Word spreads. There will be a lunar eclipse directly over Prague, a visible bite taken from the royal moon. Everyone panics. Rudolph orders you to sit beside him on the terrace and explain why the sky is eating itself. As the Earth's shadow crawls over the moon, the city whispers below like a single frightened animal. After the eclipse, nothing important happens without your timestamp. Every treaty, execution, or expedition waits at your door for a favorable hour. You start shifting events by minutes, then hours, arranging the empire's decisions into pockets of imagined safety. Ministers pace outside, angry at delays they cannot name. Inside, you argue with planets that do not know you exist. Your candles shrink faster than you can replace them. Your eyesight blurs. Constellations linger in your vision long after you close your eyes. Every sound becomes an omen. The world dissolves into patterns you may be inventing. One night you wake up with your face stuck to a chart, ink dried against your cheek. You cannot tell whether the lines on your skin are wrinkles or transits. You take an apprentice, Lucas, to carry instruments and copy tables. Fresh eyes, steady hands, someone the future might listen to. He sees you adjust a figure on Rudolph's chart before sealing it. He wonders if by changing the numbers you are still describing the heavens. You assure him that the heavens are constant and men are not. He nods, but the doubt in his gaze is clearer than any constellation. The dreaded conjunction finally arrives. The emperor stays inside. Guards are doubled. Prayers are said until throats are raw. Snow falls. The city holds its breath. No revolt, no assassination, no plague, only boredom and cold feet. The next morning, Rudolph beams. He declares your art protected him. You just smile and bow. Years pass. Your joints stiffen. Your quill grows heavier. You realize your name will not march through history books next to Rudolph's. What will remain are the tables you corrected by hand. In their hands, your fears become measurements. Your omens become orbits. They will only know that the sky obeys mathematics better than it obeyed kings. In your final winter, you cast one last chart, this time for yourself. The pattern is unremarkable. No promised greatness, no guaranteed ruin, just the slow arc of a life. For the first time since childhood, you do not touch the figures. You do not move a planet or negotiate with the page. Outside, Prague's bells toll over the golden lane. Inside your narrow room, you let the chart lie exactly as it is, and for once, you allow the heavens to speak without your help. You're about to step into the mind of the most dangerous man in Prague, and he never touched a sword. Somewhere in a locked room, a single clerk decides which letters survive and which ones burn. A tiny change of wording will make a king feel insulted, start moving soldiers, or quietly erase a rival from history. He doesn't command armies, he edits sentences. When his pen slips, ports arm for a war that never existed, then pretend it was all a misunderstanding. This is the story of the man who turned paranoia into symbols, who watched other people die because a mark on his page could be read 2 ways. A man who slowly realized the scariest secrets weren't in the code at all, but in how quickly he learned to live with what he was doing. 1590 Prague Castle. At the end of a forgotten corridor stands a door with 3 locks on the inside and 1 on the outside. Behind it, one man sits at a narrow desk bending over parchment filled with Greek letters and numbers, symbols that resemble no spoken tongue. To everyone else it would look like madness. To him, it is simply the emperor speaking in disguise. His official title is Cipher Secretary, a clerk among clerks on paper, but in practice he is the emperor's second tongue. On the left side of his desk, letters arrive in plain Latin. On the right, they leave in dense cipher with the imperial seal. He alone holds both versions in his head, the original fear or flattery, and the safe encrypted shape that will travel through hostile hands. He did not start in marble halls. He started in a village church in Moravia, praised for his neat handwriting and punished for reading beyond scripture. Sent to Vienna for discipline, he was handed a simple encrypted line as a test and cracked it before the candle burned halfway down. That day, the priest lost a troublesome boy, and the Habsburg Chancery acquired a new weapon. In Prague, they gave him something more dangerous than any sword, a small leather volume filled with tables. On each page, words like emperor, army, and uprising are mapped to numbers, zodiac signs, and tiny absurd drawings. If this book ever leaves the hollow under his floorboard, anyone clever enough could speak in Rudolph's name without ever seeing his face. One winter morning, the letter on his desk comes from nowhere he recognizes, torn from a courier's bag on a foreign road. The symbols covering it are unfamiliar, but the structure, the rhythm of nulls, repeats, and rare signs is instantly legible to him. When the plain text finally emerges, it is not battle plans, but foreign diplomats mocking Rudolph's instability and his court of madmen. He still thinks about the time a single ambiguous sign could mean ships or troops, and he chose the wrong one. Ports armed for an invasion that never came, and allies arrived with grain only to be greeted by soldiers instead of dock workers. Official reports blamed rumors and confusion. In the locked room, he blamed a twitch in his own hand. Every corridor of the castle has its own prophet, astrologers drawing circles, alchemists watching fumes, and priests polishing sermons. Each claims to protect the emperor from raw truth, insisting that only their lens is safe for his eyes. Reading their quarrels in letters, the cryptographer understands he is merely one more man selling certainty to a frightened king. A great lord writes of the emperor's melancholic humors in a way that, translated accurately, will strike Rudolph like an insult. 2 small word choices could turn the same line into flattery about a studious nature and an overburdened mind. Tonight he copies the harsh version without softening, less out of honesty than out of exhaustion with saving men he despises. He knows simple substitution ciphers are toys because he breaks them for sport when they arrive from abroad. So he builds a new maze using multiple alphabets, symbols for letter pairs, and many different signs for the same sound. When he tests it on himself and cannot crack it quickly, he feels both professional pride and a new, colder kind of fear. Presenting the new system to Rudolph, he talks of safety, espionage, and enemies who count symbols in dark rooms. The emperor's attention drifts until he mentions that, after his death, future eyes might read his private letters. Make it so that they cannot, Rudolph says quietly, caring less about the empire's secrets than about his own naked soul. A cipher is useless if only its maker can use it, so he selects 3 scribes with neat hands and dull ambitions. He drills them to see patterns instead of words, to feel where it will hide in Latin and which symbols are deliberate noise. Every time they misplace a sign, he makes them rewrite pages, reminding them that a single slip can turn envoy into spy. A letter arrives in his newest cipher, supposedly known only to Rudolph and 3 distant ambassadors. It comes from the bag of a courier found with his throat cut beside a forest road, his horse still tied to a tree. The message itself is dull logistics, which means the murder was not for content, but for the chance to study the emperor's new maze. The council orders him to assume the code is compromised and prove otherwise by breaking his own past letters without the book. He spends 3 days counting symbols on the walls, building crude frequency charts with charcoal and sleeplessness. When he reports that the cipher is strong for now, he leaves unsaid the conclusion gnawing at him: nothing stays strong forever. By touch alone, he can now guess which letters carry danger, feeling the thickness of paper and the tremor of seals. He starts deciding not just what to decode, but when, sliding some crises up the pile and letting others cool for a day. In practice, it means armies march or stay still according to one man's private sense of which panic should be served first. Some letters never leave his room: petty denunciations, jealous sermons, and small vendettas dressed as patriotism. He reads them, weighs the cost of each, and feeds many to the fire with a motion that now feels routine. The ash collecting at his feet is made not just of paper, but of futures that will never reach the emperor's eyes. Day after day, he reads other people's weaknesses: adulteries coded as visits, bribes as gifts, heresy in Greek letters. At first, their excuses disgust him, then they bore him, and eventually they start to sound disturbingly reasonable. He realizes with a chill that the phrases "for the good of the realm" and "just this once" now live comfortably in his own head. Without planning to, he begins keeping tallies of symbol frequencies across dozens of intercepted letters. He discovers that even the smartest cipher cannot hide how often certain sounds must appear in any human language. He calls it convenient counting, never guessing that future scholars will quietly build a science on the same idea. His hands shake now, so the council sends a young man named Matthias with steady fingers and hungry eyes. Matthias learns the patterns frighteningly fast, filling in pieces of keys the master has not even spoken aloud. Watching him, the cryptographer understands that the secrets he guards no longer require him, only the book and a pair of fresh hands. One sleepless night, he writes a letter to no one, in a private cipher made of every alphabet and trick he knows. Line by line, he records what he has never told a priest: the weight of changing a word and watching a man die for it. Instead of locking it away, he hides it in a bundle of boring records, trusting chance to preserve the only honest thing he has ever written. Rudolph will die, the court will thin, and later centuries will crack these ciphers in bright lecture halls and quiet archives. They will reconstruct tables he drew in candle smoke and congratulate themselves on solving the emperor's codes. However, they will never know the sound of his breath when the ink finally gave up its secret, and that, in the end, is the only part of the cipher that stays unbroken.